Hey everybody, what if I'm Nico?
I guess that would make me Kevo.
Maybe in this universe, and this is mcu.html/what if the cha-cha slide.
I know it's right, but I don't want to give it to you because it doesn't sound right. It should be backslash. But you know what? For the sake of what if and questioning reality.
What if in this world everybody got it right?
Sure, // what if T'Challa became Star-Lord? I sort of have to question the premise of this from the very beginning. I have to. Star-Lord was Peter's mom's name for him, right?
Yes. Well, he could have just gotten it a different way in this universe.
It should have been Star King, but that's fine.
Oh, I love that. That's hot. We're here today, of course, to discuss What If Episode 2, as Kevo pointed out. I want to start with I really enjoyed this episode a lot.
Yeah.
I was a little thrown that there are some implications that, like, the least driven version of T'Challa is the best possible version of Star-Lord. I don't want to break down the specifics because, like, that's the point of a what if. What ifs are supposed to be nonsense. That's the fucking point.
Yeah, but you can do them in such a way that they don't have to be total nonsense is the thing.
I
don't think that there's anything wrong with at least a slight magnifying glass to it, not a full microscope.
Right, because we don't want to burn Ant-Man or anything.
No.
But I loved huge things about this episode. But once again, my least favorite part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I love the performance and I love the memology of it, I don't care for Yondu's story. Because, just hear me out. In the first Guardians, because by the way, we rep in Guardians, right? They make it sound very much like Yondu was a ruthless psychological and physical abuser who took no end to the joy he got out of abusing Star-Lord. And we're made that very clear in that first movie.
I feel as well, yes.
He's about to use one of the Infinity Stones to destroy the universe for a second.
Yeah.
He's not a good man in the first Guardians.
No. He helps them in the climax, but there's a lot of what's in it for me about it, and he does think that he takes the power gem in the end. So yeah, he is very ruthless, very greedy, very dangerous in the first film, and it's very much pulled back on in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 when suddenly he's Peter's daddy.
Well, especially because his other daddy is Ego.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they made Yondu a better dad by finding a way to give Peter a worse dad. But I'm here to bring some Ren and Stimpy fucking log logic at your way. Better than bad actually doesn't mean good. Better than bad just means that thing's awful, and if this thing is anything, it's at least less awful than that.
And the first time that we experienced Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, watching the movies back-to-back immediately.
Because in theaters, there was a back-to-back showing.
You can really immediately see that retcon of Yondu between the first and second films. And especially with the memology of,
Mary Poppins, y'all!
And I'm your daddy, and he's become a very beloved character to the point where the actual initial question and concept for this episode was, what if Yondu took someone else? It had nothing to do with T'Challa in the first place. It was, what if Yondu took someone else?
Yeah.
And they realized T'Challa is the same age as Peter.
And I struggle with the further softening of Yondu that this episode presents, because I don't personally feel I can reconcile Yondu from the second movie with Yondu from the first film, independent of the fact that I think this episode, it's just these things feel so real because they rely on so many things you've seen that you kind of fill in the missing bits yourself, so it feels like an hour-long movie, even though it's a quick, high-energy these two episodes have been amazing. Like,
they're short films. Is what they are.
And they've both been so, like, at that sort of like a Pixar short level of storytelling quality for me, right? Where they understand exactly what they need to show and then move on.
Yeah.
I have trouble rectifying this teddy bear Yondu with fucking Five Nights at Freddy's teddy bear Yondu from Guardians 2, which is nothing compared to the Revenant bear from Guardians 1. So, okay. That all out of the way for me. I'd love to know your reaction to that before we get into the episode.
I think for me that's also very much connected with what I feel was the almost saintly portrayal of T'Challa in this episode, to the point where being in space meant he convinced Thanos not to go after the Infinity Gems anymore. And the influence that he clearly had on Yondu as a father. This, to me, really paints an interesting layer on Yondu where it says to me that Peter wasn't special so much as Yondu was looking to be a father at that point in his life, and Peter was there, and if someone instead like T'Challa had been there, he might have actually become a better person. And it says a lot to me about the influence we have on each other, not to get to the good place on you, but the different people that come into your life can have different influences on you. And who's to say that Yondu couldn't have been a better person? Clearly he wasn't amazing by the fact that he kept T'Challa for all these years. I think something else that's really interesting to me about this episode is we are following the basic timeline of the MCU. T'Challa was taken in 1988, and we're told this episode is 20 years later, which actually puts it 6 years before Guardians of the Galaxy, which I'm not saying is wrong or bad, but it's really
muddling.
interesting. It's really interesting if they are aware that that is what they did. They might not be, because people don't always think, and this is a branch of the MCU that isn't necessarily going to be given that same level of scrutiny when it comes to making sure all of the canon is correct.
You know, that's part of where I love what ifs and don't love what ifs.
Mhm.
Marvel has maybe decided that the what if formula doesn't thrive the way it once did, and they've sort of shook up the what if formula. Instead of telling, oh man, these are more stories from the original era of that character and other stories that are like, what if this other thing happened? They have now switched over from individual issues like that to telling miniseries, what if Spider-Man had never gotten rid of the symbiote?
Mhm.
What if Ragnarok had never occurred? Like, they tell miniseries in that vein that sort of suffices the what if. And now the going back and telling stories you never knew stuff, which is a lot of what Guardians 2 did in a lot of ways, they're told through miniseries that tie into that era specifically. So they've sort of specialized the art of the miniseries and the back reveal. And that's kind of the best things about a what if, because they allow you to take some art you've already looked at and you get a really new feel on it.
Mhm.
For instance, getting Karen Gillan to play a Super Jessica Rabbit version
Very
of
femme
Nebula.
fatale. She's very based on Julia Roberts in the Oceans films.
Love it.
Cha-Cha was an improv by Karen Gillan.
That's fucking brilliant. It's the best part of the
And-
episode.
Yeah, and they asked her to play it up. Absolutely.
Best part of the
Her-
fucking episode.
Her performance is fantastic, and we were already excited for what we could see from Karen Gillan with Nebula after Endgame, but this is just, she's such a great actress, even just by voice, and just by this weird format, you know?
And it's something that, like, I feel like when we talk about great voice actors, we're talking about people who understand how to operate in multiple dualities and multiple soundscapes. You know, you think about Mark Hamill, who the closest he ever comes as Luke Skywalker to sounding anything like the Joker is 3PO! That's like the closest he ever comes. And it reminds me of the amazing sort of work done over in the Batman franchise from the 90s by the likes of Kevin Conroy, who has played Batman in so many phases of the character's life at this point, whether it's through portrayals in Batman the Animated Series or in Batman the New Adventures or in Batman Beyond. He
appeared in the CW verse in one of the Elseworlds crossovers.
Amazing.
Yeah.
He's such a really cool gay guy. And so frequently I feel actors don't need to be voice actors. Voice acting is an art unto itself. Let
Yes.
voice actors be voice actors. Karen Gillan, you justify having you come in and play your part. I knew it was Nebula, but she felt like an all-new Nebula that I could root for from the beginning instead of coming to root for with a gun to my head. And there was something so incredible. And Chadwick Boseman did a great job, but I felt like his character was a little too lighthearted to be my Panther.
It felt a little bit like the Ragnarok-ification of Thor.
Great, yeah.
And from what I understand, Boseman enjoyed this portrayal of T'Challa to the point where it would have influenced Wakanda forever. This more lighthearted, gung-ho characterization. It just felt so different. We have so little characterization.
Yeah.
Of T'Challa already. We basically mostly have his film, and then to a lesser degree Civil War, which is part of where I'm like, I don't know where this Saint T'Challa came from, because he's the guy who kept trying to kill Bucky because he thought Bucky killed his dad. Whereas this guy is like, no, love everyone. And it's great, and it's definitely a far cry from the Star-Lord we already knew.
So, speaking of things we knew, and now things we have to face, I was more excited by the inclusion of Howard the Duck and the reimagining of Nebula as like Nebby and like, being like a hot fun sex kitten.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of issues with California Thanos.
Yes, as production referred to him.
I just don't think he makes any sense. Even if this is based on 1,000 what ifs and this is the most consistent alternate universe version of Thanos.
Is it?
I'm saying even if it were.
Okay, even if it were.
I don't care. I don't like it. And it doesn't make sense to the character for me if he was so willing to commit genocide, as was adorably pointed out this episode. I just don't think it makes sense. And I think making even less sense is the Collector just suddenly becoming the biggest bad in the history of the universe. Like, it was just so... He could not have been as big a threat as he seemed for him to have been so quickly. I don't know. That's the one real big oomph was the climax plot.
See, and for me, I had a bigger problem with the characterization of Korath in this episode. I feel like it was so bizarre with everything we've gotten from the character from the first Guardians film, from Captain Marvel. He is such a California Valley Girl fangirl,
like sycophant.
T'Challa.
Yeah,
and like I don't feel that the joke was worth what it does to the character. Well, I guess we're best friends. Like, what? Because it's too dramatically different, especially because he is still working for Ronan at the point at which we meet him, so he's not so different from the character that we met in Guardians.
This is why I have said that What If worries me since day one.
Yes, I get that.
Because I can make a lot of logical reasons why Korath would be completely different. It's not even hard for me because, so we know in the comics at this point, Wakanda has intergalactic travel. And I'm going to allow that to play into the films for a moment to understand how they were able to get people into space.
I feel like they especially would have focused more heavily on that if T'Challa had been taken into space.
For certain.
Yeah, 1,000%.
And I don't believe it is in Wakanda's nature to simply send ships into foreign lands without being prepared to understand regency and diplomatic relations. I would believe that Wakanda could have gone to a planet one day and made contact with people, and it could have had a profound impact on Korath. And I can get there. But it's kind of unfortunate that I have to get there on my own in 26 minutes, and I have to use other knowledge. And, there's a lot of people who aren't going to fucking ask. There's a lot of people who are going to be like, oh, it's fine. Who cares? It's funny. It's cute. You want funny and you want cute. You don't want it to come at a cost. I actually really did enjoy Korath. I thought he was adorable. I get you having, an issue with it. I just think it's a lighthearted take on a character, but it's because I immediately contextualized it. If you don't immediately make the reason why he would be sweeter, getting there isn't as easy.
And I get where you're coming from with Tivan the Collector as well. My perspective, though, is we've seen that he's pretty crazy already a few times.
Crazy, but he's not a void monster.
No, but he's got all those toys, and in a power vacuum, he stepped up.
Okay.
The fact that the Black Order came to work for him, it all sort of falls into place a little too easily, but so do a lot of things about these what-ifs that you just sort of have to unfocus your brain and be like, sure. Like Howard the Duck basically just being a stand-in for Rocket. Sure.
I did also enjoy that one of the things we've said since day one about Guardians 1 is the chick who's like, I'm going to execute, I'm going to destroy the world, fuck! Like her. I love her in that role in that movie, but it is pretty fucking what the fuck just happened? What? And
she got her due here.
Yeah.
She got to have a really cool moment. We love that actress from Elementary.
Mm-hmm.
She played the role of Kitty in season 3 and a few times after that. She's great, and it was really cool. We immediately recognized her voice. It's those little things. It's like the fact that Peter was working at the Dairy Queen from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that we see his parents go to. It's those little attentions to detail and pulling these things that they have the ability to... It's great having even the minor actors come back. From what I understand, everyone was asked, and everyone who did not come back just said no. Not. Yeah. Dave Bautista says that he wasn't asked, but one of the producers is like, then there must have been a miscommunication because everyone was asked. There's no pressure is the thing. So yeah, Robert Downey Jr. is not going to do this. I understand that.
But Dave Bautista is such a cheap get for authenticity's sake in a world where it's harder to get Chris Pratt, I can't imagine them purposely passing on getting Dave Bautista. I do appreciate the amount of work they go to still ground it in not just authenticity with Marvel actors, but in authenticity with storylines. It was really great to see the royal family of Wakanda at the end. There was a lot of good ties.
And from what I understand, James Gunn and Chadwick Boseman both had a lot of input on the script in terms of making sure the Ravagers were consistent and that T'Challa was consistent. And in addition, Ryan Coogler and Marvel producer Nate Moore were also consulted just to make sure that everything worked with everything they were doing with the films. And I think that's really cool. Even if they're doing batshit stuff like California Thanos, there's still stuff like using the embers as a weapon and growing a jungle in a guy.
How Guardians?
That is so Guardians. It was perfect. It was a really good short film of this concept, and I don't anticipate any duds just based on the first two. They're doing a really great job so far.
I think what I like the most is that it's a charming look back at some films where our brains fill in a lot of the context for us. It's kind of like getting to watch the movie quickly, but not quite.
Yeah.
It's not quite Black Panther, and it's not quite Guardians. The first one wasn't quite Agent Carter, nor was it quite the first Avenger. It's kind of a cool way to get to watch two things at once. It gives you a little bit more variety. You know, I think one of the things that stops me from watching Avengers movies more is that they're 2 fucking hours long. And this is a pretty easy way to download part of it back into your brain for fun.
Yeah, I get that. I really do.
So until next time, where we once again ponder,
what if?
In the great voice of Uatu, though I need an Uatu hat, which I guess is just my bald
giant
head,
but like a helmet version
of my giant head,
like a motorcycle helmet to look like your head. I think actually, weirdly enough, next week we possibly are going back to Loki. I think it's a Loki episode. But
what if Loki had come with good intentions?
What if he came correct? What if he was a diplomat instead of trying to be a tyrant? So maybe we're back on Loki next week. Maybe not.
Maybe not.
We'll see. What if?
What if?
Wait, Ned, do you want to trade hats and then cut it so that it looks like we traded hats, and we could be like, but what if these were the hats the whole time?
Nah, that's okay. But I love you.
Hit and stop.
Hey guys, if you like that cut, do be sure to like some of our other materials. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out these other amazing videos here at X's for Podcast.